So I know we're 2 weeks out, but is it still okay to celebrate the fact that 2020 is finally behind us?
All this.
It's over! It's over, ladies and gentlemen!
Lost in the madness of 2020 was the fact that we reached the 20th anniversary of some really good albums. Look, the official timeline of this channel, I want it to begin like in 2001, but that doesn't mean we should forget the turn of the century back in the new millennium, because a lot of the albums we're going to talk about on this channel going forward had their foundations back in the year 2000. But before we get into it, I need to be very clear. This is not some exhaustive list of all the great albums of punk and pop or metalcore that came out in the year 2000. These are just some that I really like, that I go back and listen to. And I should also note that most of these, I think they're very listenable by the album. What I mean is you could start on track 1 and go all the way to the very end. And that's why I recommended these. These aren't great to listen to on a shuffle and streaming, yet the songs are still good, but the experience is so much better. So even if you are going to stream it or you're going to check it on YouTube or whatever, start from track 1 and go to the end. Trust me, kids, it's worth your wait. Our first entry came to us in the early spring in the form of an absolute classic by Alkaline Trio. On March 13th, the trio put out their final release on Asian Man Records, the aptly named Maybe I'll Catch Fire. And it should also be noted that this was the final album of the original-ish Alkaline Trio lineup. Look, all the tracks are amazing on this one, but some of them really stand out. Mad at Me nicely combines their dark but melodic style. Fuck You Aurora is probably the most underrated song in their catalog. Sleepyhead reaches an unbelievable crescendo. The title track is a masterclass in their signature use of creative puns. She Took Him to the Lake perfectly illustrates their ability to show vulnerability. Yeah, I like that one. You're not the only ones that can do puns, or whatever that is, Alkaline Trio. And of course, this album closes with Radio. Freaking Radio. Do I need to say more? A few weeks later, on March 28th, Goldfinger released Stomping Ground. You know what really bums me out? That for a lot of people, Goldfinger is really just a band from the Tony Hawk video game series. Yeah, that was such a big vehicle for them, but it really undersells how great their individual output was. Stomping Ground might not be their best release, but it's still a very enjoyable listen. Some of the highlights include Pick a Fight, Counting the Days, and the awesome San Simeon. Well, let's be honest, the crown jewel of this album is their cover of 99 Red Balloons. No disrespect to the Cold War or anything like that, but this is the best version of that song. Fight me if you think differently. 99 decision street, 99 ministers me. As we rolled into May, MxPx made an appearance. Yeah, this is the one with Responsibility. And honestly, I find it amazing how now MxPx does a really good job of embracing their role as the elder statesman of punk, because they really got the whole idea of the immaturity of punk down to a T back in this era. You can argue that their mid-90s material was really their best stuff, but the Ever-Passing Moment holds up really well compared to their previous work. And let's be honest, My Life Story is among the most underrated songs of the early 2000s pop-punk boom. Firmly in the summer now, we got NOFX's Pump Up the Valium. Gotta be honest, this is another one on the list that feels a little underrated. And although this period might be considered NOFX's prime, the album still seems to be a bit forgotten. You know, in the 90s we got White Trash, Punk and Drublick, the 30-minute masterpiece that was The Decline. And in the 2000s we got the political albums that really put NOFX feels like on a different stratosphere, kind of made them a different band. But Pump Up the Valium is the best of both eras. And it has some bangers that do occasionally pop up on their live set to this day. or whenever it was they last played a live show. And let's face it, Dinosaurs Will Die might be the most logical indictment of corporate music in the history of punk. That's saying something. And no, it's not ironic that NOFX are like the dinosaurs of punk rock now. Read the lyrics. There's nuance. Next month, we have the first major release by Mest. On July 11, 2000, Mest put out an absolute classic. Look, I absolutely adore this album, but I have a hard time remembering what songs were on Wasting Time and what songs would be coming up in 2001 on Destination Unknown. But when you take a look at it in isolation, Wasting Time is anything but, well, a waste of time. There's no highlights from this album, and that's not a bad thing. I mean, there's no highlights because there's no low points. No track really sticks out. But if I'm forced to submit a few entries for recommendation, it's an amazing 4-song ride that takes you through Hotel Room, What's the Dealio, Slow Motion, and Drawing Board. They're probably the perfect sampling of the Mest catalog if you wanted to show someone what this band was all about and to a lot of ways still is about. And you know what? You could throw Richard Marxism in there just for good measure. August 1st brought us arguably the best album on this list, but also the most underappreciated by that band's core fanbase. Of course, I'm talking about Rancid's 2000 self-titled album. Now, this is their second self-titled album, next to their debut. Sometimes this is called Rancid 5, which nobody calls it that. I don't know why Wikipedia said that. Rancid 2000, yeah, I've heard that. Rancid. That does not sound fun. In this era, no band was a stronger public symbol for punk credibility. And this was their unabashed declaration of their punk bona fides. Let me be perfectly clear. This is a great album. Like I said, maybe the best on this list. But I kind of think it's not really representative of what made Rancid so awesome. If Rancid is the American Clash, then this album is what the Clash would have sounded like if they merged with like a New York hardcore band. There are exceptions, but this album really strips away so much of the charm that Rancid had on their previous releases. That doesn't make the songs bad, just a little bit different and not always what you would expect. Now, one way where this is like a lot of the Rancid releases, there's a ton of songs, but they're punk songs. So the whole thing is just under like 40 minutes. So it doesn't set you back, even though you have to listen to 22 songs. Like I said, this is a great album, top to bottom. But if you haven't heard it in a while, I would definitely give a second listen to songs like It's Quite Alright, Rwanda, Antennas, Radio Havana. I kind of think Black Derby Jacket is a bit of a Ruby Soho sequel. Read the lyrics, you tell me what you think. And the closer, GGF, is a pretty awesome classic Rancid song. September 19th brought us arguably the most critically acclaimed release on this list. This might be a bit of a hot take, but The Art of Drowning is the last good thing AFI ever did. I mean, it's the perfect merger of the two prior AFI eras. I think Black Sails in the Sunset tried a little too hard, but at this point we're never going to go back to a band that was writing songs about warring cereal brands. Go check that song out if you haven't heard it. Not on our timeline, but a pretty awesome song, and it's hard to believe that was the same band as this.
This is what I brought you, this you can keep. This is what I brought you, may forget me.
What we got in 2000 was an album with gothic and horror overtones, coupled with genuine melodic punk rock. Songs like Wester and The Days of the Phoenix illustrate this perfectly. But the standout track on this thing, and I will go to the grave with this, and I'm sure AFI would be happy to see someone in the grave with one of their songs, it's the closer, Morning Star. Now this does not fit that melodic punk rock thing that we're talking about. This maybe even is closer to what they would later become, but this is an absolutely phenomenal song. It's one too that kind of stays in your soul and never really leaves. If pop punk was ever awarded a national holiday, September 26th would be the day that we all had off of work. Think about how awesome a pop punk holiday would be. Seriously though, how wild is it that these two pop punk avatars released self-titled albums on the same date? Now, this wasn't a debut album for Newfound Glory, but it seems like a lot of history has framed it as such. Their actual debut, Nothing Gold Can Stay, is uber underrated, but the self-titled album is really their big bang moment. Like some of the other albums on this list, there is no low point. And this is another hot take, but I'm going to say their re-recording of Hit or Miss is their most iconic song. All apologies to my friends over you. Additionally, if you were ever engrossed in this culture at any point in your youth, a listen through this classic will hit you in all the nostalgic feels. Even the last 3 songs on this thing are a little cheesy but super endearing. And now on to Good Charlotte. The band that is always battling Simple Plan to be the most maligned of the genre. With that in mind, I think that Good Charlotte's self-titled debut has completely been retconned into the Good Charlotte hate industry. This album was not that polarizing at the time when it came out. It was really after The Young and the Hopeless was released that the Good Charlotte hate, I think, ballooned to pretty ridiculous levels. And then as the 2000s wore on, they kind of earned it. Just kidding. I know at this point everyone has heard Little Things one time in their life, but there's other great songs on this as well. Waldorf Worldwide, the Motivation Proclamation, the Festival Song, those are all immensely good pop songs. To be honest, the quality really doesn't dip on this thing until the final song, Screamer. Not a bad song, just kind of a generic pop rock song. And if you do give this album a listen, make sure you find a version with a click on it.
Click, 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 click. Ain't nobody fresher than me.
I don't know why it's not included on streaming services. I know researching it, it was on like a Japanese release. I don't know, but everyone I knew who had this, and my copy definitely had the click on it. And the click is part of this, no doubt. I beg you, if you listen to this album, please do it with an open mind. And finally, we end on October 24th with Live at the Key Club by Pennywise. I was a little hesitant to put a live greatest hits, essentially, album on this list, but this is pretty essential listening. In the pre-digital age, if you wanted to show someone the essential Pennywise setlist, coupled with some of the energy of their live performances, Live at the Key Club definitely has you covered. It's kind of the perfect Pennywise summation if you go kind of pre-Land of the Free Pennywise. Everything you need to know about the band is on this, and in the live setting, just kind of makes it extra fun. What do you think about my favorite albums for the year 2000? Is there some that I missed that I should have had on there? Is there some that I overrated? Let me know down below in the comment section. Here's to a great 2021.
Happy Millennium!